thank you for participating in the second session of Jane Revell's webinar, whose title is Objectives and Dreams in a Climate of Change and Uncertainty. This session, as you know, will be more interactive than the first session, since Jane wishes to chat with you in order to maximize the outcome and the beneficial effects of the webinar. And now, I leave the floor to Jane, and I also admit other friends.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask you first, can you all hear me? Can you raise your hand if you can hear, or nod? Good. Oh, thank you so much for coming. It's really nice of you and it's lovely to see you because I know you're very busy people and you've made time out of your busy lives to come and be here or be there today. So thank you for that. I also need to say, I think, as Maria Antonietta said, I'm getting a strange big picture in the middle. There we go.
Oh, I have. Okay, I have to. Okay. Jane, can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, can you hear me again? Can you hear me? Yeah, good.
Yes.
So, as Maria Antonietta was saying, since my last session with you, can you raise your hand if you were at that last session on February the 22nd? Nobody. Well, since that session, that's okay. Since that session, everything has changed because that was on February the 22nd. And on February the 24th, of course, Putin invaded Ukraine. And I think I need to say something about that at the beginning because it's changed our world and it's changed us, I think, fundamentally. It's a different place now than it was before. And I want to talk about it a little because I want to tell you how it makes me feel. And I'm going to ask you as I'm talking to think about some of the words that you would use to describe how you feel about this, okay? For me, some words that come to mind are outraged, shocked, terribly sad, and sad not just for me, but mostly for my children and my grandchildren and the kind of world that they're now going to be living in. I feel angry. I feel terrifically angry. I feel frustrated and powerless because I'd love to do something, but I don't know what I can do. I feel depressed at times. I wake up in the morning and I think, oh, lovely day. And then I remember what's happening in Ukraine. And I'm very afraid as well. I'm afraid not just what's happening now, but what could happen as time goes on. And again, mainly not for me. I'm moving towards the end of my life, but for my children and my grandchildren. Those are all the negatives, but there are some positives as well, and I want to share those with you. I feel very grateful to be in a peaceful country. I realize how that must feel not to be. I also feel very lucky because these things are a matter of chance very often. I just happen to be living in Western Europe and not Eastern Europe. And I find too that everything that's happening is making me appreciate very simple things. Like walking in the garden today, I heard a bird singing and it was beautiful. And I took time to really listen, perhaps in a way that I wouldn't have done a month or two ago. So can I ask you maybe to use the chat box and just write a word that you're feeling right now with everything that's happening in the world? Just one word, one adjective that describes how you feel. Anything you like. Shocked, terribly sad, shocked. Yes, shocked. I think we're all incredibly shocked. Very tired, yes. Confused, afraid, fear, sadness, shock again. I think too is
No.
suspended. Yes, it's kind of like we're in some kind of limbo. It's hard to make decisions, which is why it's quite hard for me to be talking about objectives and dreams in a world of crisis and uncertainty and change and uncertainty. It's very hard to plan because we don't know what the future holds. But we can still do so. Okay, thank you. Depressed. Yes, I do too sometimes. Okay, thank you for that. And that all those words and all those feelings makes me feel that maybe it's time to take more care of not just ourselves, but of the world that we cherish, because these things can happen as they happened in Ukraine overnight. So maybe we need to work more right now just to safeguard the freedoms that we have and make sure they stay. And also to appreciate everything we have, to count our blessings. And one thing I'm learning too, when you watch the scenes on television of all the immigrants, all the refugees coming through the Polish border or the Slovakian border, Moldovan border, how generously they're received. There's tremendous generosity on behalf of the people who are taking them in. And I thought maybe it's time to be more generous and less selfish. So there are lots of lessons to be learned. At the end of the session, I've just sent to Maria Antonietta a link which she can forward you, which is to do with a storytelling session for Ukraine. Did you know that Sunday, the 20th of March, just gone, was storytelling, World Storytelling Day. And there was a meeting of people and they told stories and they read poems for Ukraine. And I thought that might be of interest for you, not just as teachers, but as people. So if you are interested, I'll try and remind you at the end. Do ask Maria Antonietta and she'll let you have the file. Is that right, Maria Antonietta? Yeah. So to say to you that in all of this, I talk about looking after yourself and being in a good state, but I haven't always managed brilliantly. I've found that I've been quite depressed at times. And one of the things that I did to help was I've started to reread. I don't know if any of you know this book. It's by somebody called Viktor Frankl. And it's called, the title of the book is Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a Jew and a psychiatrist, and he was imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp. And he survived. And he asked himself the question, which I think is very relevant today in Ukraine: how can people survive? How can they want to go on living in such terrible circumstances? And he wrote a book about it. And I think it's a wonderful book. And I'm reading it again because I need it right now. And I'll read you just an extract from it, a very short one. And he says, "We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." So whatever happens to us, he's saying, we actually have choice. We can behave in a certain way or we can behave in a different way. And that reminds me too of a quote by Nietzsche, which is to do with having objectives. And he says, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. So again, in Ukraine, they have a why. They're preserving their country and their heritage. And so they're prepared to go through any circumstances for that to happen. And in the concentration camps, Frankl talks about those prisoners who had a reason to go on living, who had some kind of objective to see their family again. Those were the people who did manage to survive. It made a difference. So focusing on the future can be helpful. I'd like to share, I'm just throwing lots and bits and pieces at you to set the scene, okay? And I have another quote from somebody called Jamal Edwards, who you probably never heard of. I had never heard of him until about a month ago. He died on the 20th of February. These are all things that happened in February. He was age 31 and he was a British music entrepreneur, and he did a lot to help young people trying to set up their own businesses. And he worked for charity. And he died at the age of 31, quite suddenly. And he became a hero. And he said before his death, "We all die. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal is to recreate something that will." And he's certainly done that with the charity that he left behind. I find that an interesting thing. When I die, what will I have left behind me that's useful for other people? Something, I hope. Okay. I think it's a lovely way of thinking of it. Thinking too of Rini, some of you have been to some of her sessions that she's worked quite a lot with Maria Antonietta. I know some of you know her. She is currently on her way to Monaco, where she's moderating a very important conference about the ocean, and life is going on. Also to say to you in February, what happened on the 1st of February? It was the Chinese Year of the Tiger. I don't know if any of you are tigers. I'm a tiger. And I thought, great, tiger is ready to pounce. This is a good omen. And it says, actually, if you look in the sort of Chinese horoscope, yes, tiger is a year of positive changes. Well, it's not been that positive so far. Let's hope that the peace talks take place. And finally, since I saw you, March the 7th was my birthday. So all of those things have happened since we last met. Those of you who were there, I know many of you weren't, that's okay. And what I want to do today is not assume that you've seen me before. The original idea of the two sessions on February the 22nd and March the 22nd was to be connected. It was sort of conceived as a little mini course so that you would receive material before February the 22nd, before the first part, to be able to think about ideas, come and be able to participate fully. And then after the first session, you'd have more material to take you to the second session. But I don't think any of you have done that, have you? You've just come along today, which is fine. So I will fill you in a little bit on what we've done before. The idea of today was essentially going to be a sharing of ideas, but you may not have. Have you had a look at the handouts that Maria Anton, you're nodding, that's great. Elizabeth, you're nodding.
Yes.
Good, well done. Some of you had, oh, you had too.
I did.
Patricia, you have done some as well. Good. Did you find them interesting and useful? Yeah.
Yes, a lot.
Oh, good, good. Because I'm going to turn to you a little bit from time to time just to give some feedback. The idea was that this whole session would be sharing ideas. But don't worry, if it's not very sharey, which it might not be, I have some ideas to add as well, so we'll be okay. Okay. today's session. So today's session, I'm going to remind you of the last, not just the last session, but a session I did with you, some of you, a year ago, which was called Surviving These Times as Best We Can. Because the ideas in all the sessions are essentially the same. Just different ways, different stories, different ways into them, okay? So today I'm going to remind you of, and we're going to take it forward and add some new things to what we've already done, okay? And because you weren't there, most of you, I'll make sure that I fill you in and bring you up to speed, okay? And I will be punctuating everything I do. Those of you who have been to any of my sessions at all before will know this. I'll be asking you to do something physical because it's so bad for your mind and your body to sit for ages in front of a computer looking at me and taking part in a Zoom session. So can I ask you, please, if you wouldn't mind, and by the way, you can always say no, that's okay. If you don't want to do this, that's fine. But if you would like to, push your chair back and stand up. And can I just ask you to stretch your arms up above your head and pull them down behind your head. Open your shoulders and bring them round. Okay, and again, put your hands behind your head. Open your shoulders and bring them round. I keep hitting the light when I do this. Last time, behind your head. Open your shoulders and bring them round. Okay. If I ask you to do something and it hurts or you know it's bad for you, please don't do it or please stop doing it. Okay. Do sit down. Thank you. Just notice how you feel. See if you're feeling a bit better for having moved. And if you find yourself working for long periods of time in front of a computer, make sure maybe you need a timer every 20 minutes or so to get up, do something physical. Okay. You will, it's not a waste of time. It will actually enhance the time that you're then working. Okay, Patricia, I can hardly see you. I can only see you from your nose up. Ah, thank you. Lovely. Okay. I'm going to start with a story that I haven't told for years. In fact, I had to remind myself of it this morning. Some of you may know it because it's a story I used to tell a lot. But as I say, I've not told it for many, many years now. And it goes like this, and it may be familiar to some of you. By the way, if you think you know the ending to it, please can I ask you to keep mum, i.e. don't say it, okay? Just keep it to you for the moment because I want everybody to think. It's the story of a widower who had lost his wife. And when his wife died, he found himself left with their two young daughters. Very young, very curious, very excited by learning about the world, asking lots of questions all the time. And some of the time he could answer their questions. But a lot of the time, because he wasn't a very educated man, he was at a loss. He couldn't find the answer to what they needed. This is before the day of searching on the internet, okay? This is a long time ago. So he would say things to them like, well, maybe ask your teacher, because teachers know a lot, do they not? Or maybe look it up in a book or in an encyclopedia in those days. But he didn't feel he was actually doing them justice. He didn't feel it was adequate. He wanted to give them more. So he did something that you often did in those days. He sent them to live with the wise old man who lived on the hill. Off they went with their suitcases. And they moved in with the wise old man. Very strange idea. There you go. And life continued, and the girls continued asking questions, lots of questions. But unlike their father, the wise old man always had an answer. He knew everything. There wasn't anything he didn't know. And this was absolutely delightful at first. But as time went by, he began to feel it was less delightful. Or they began to get bored because there wasn't anything he didn't know. And so they began to search for ways to catch him out, to find a question that he couldn't answer. And they searched and they searched and they played with ideas. And then one day, one of the sisters ran up to the other sister and said, I've got this great idea. I've got this butterfly in my hands. And I thought we could go up to the wise old man and say to him, look, I've got a butterfly in my hands. Is it alive or is it dead? And if he says, it's dead, I'll open my hands and let it fly out. And if he says, it's alive, I'll give a quick, hard and say, sorry, it's dead. And her sister said, great idea, let's go find him. And so off they went to find the wise old man. And finally, they found him sitting on a rock under a eucalyptus tree, just thinking about life as wise old men do, meditating a little. And so the two sisters ran up to him, and the sister with the butterfly said, oh, wise old man, I have a butterfly in my hands, and I want you to tell me, is it alive or is it dead? Okay, I want to leave that with you just for a while. I'll come back at the end to the story and tell you the rest of the story. And I'd like you to be thinking about it. Okay. As I say, if you think you know the answer or you've heard the story before, please don't tell anybody yet. Okay. Have a